Welcome to World of Marketing Podcast, a Foster Web Marketing production. Here's your host, Tom Foster.
Hey everybody, it's Tom Foster in the World of Marketing. And I got my good buddy Jamie Kelly here with me today. And those of you that don't know, Jamie Kelly is Director of Services, which really means like all things digital marketing, SEO, and he manages the crew, the team that does all of the SEO and pay-per-click services for all the clients. It's about 70 right now, isn't it, Jamie?
76.
76 now. That's a big. And how many services strategists do we have?
7, I think, about to be more. We're in the process of hiring right now. Kudos to the sales team for bringing in all those new deals. We need to hire new bodies to make sure we can deliver on.
Yeah, it seems a lot more people are signing up for services or having us do it for them or some combination. And I just had a podcast, World of Marketing, with one of our great clients, Scott Alperin, who just went on and on about John Spare, who's doing a great job for that crew down there.
Yeah, John's great.
But first of all, I know you're a busy guy, so thank you for taking the time out of your day to hang out with me.
Always.
And the purpose of this podcast is to update our people on what Google's up to, because they're always up to something.
It's always something.
Even though they're all working from home, just like we are. And we just got there, because I know Robbie, who's my son-in-law, he works at Google, and they just were told, don't come back. We're closed until July 2021.
I saw that too. And given how much data Google has access to, I think it's pretty interesting that they've gone ahead and said preemptively that nobody's coming back until then at the very least. I think we could probably all learn a thing or two from the decision making they're doing based on the volume of data that they have access to.
Interesting, right? So we're going to make this for our people and everybody else that listens to the World of Marketing. We want to have this more frequent, where I'd like to just get an update from you about what's going on in the land of not just Google, but SEO and SEM, pay-per-click, just the world of digital marketing in general. But today, let's talk specifically about this new thing that Google's up to. I want to make sure I say it right. Core Web Vitals.
That's right.
That is correct, Commander.
So we know they just did a big update. What was it, May?
Early May.
May. And it was a sneaky update. It was actually, it was almost like they pushed the update that they said they were going to do a long time ago. Wouldn't you say?
So the update in May was focused pretty heavily on local visibility and content, the effectiveness and quality of the content on your site, de-emphasizing thin content that used to rank pretty well, and a continued emphasis on local visibility. Two things that Google has been talking about for quite some time now in terms of increased importance in their own core ranking algorithm. And yeah, it's something that they've been telling people about for a while, and things that they've been telling site owners are going to be important factors. And I think this update recently in May is one of the first major instances of them making those part of the their core algorithm that they use to rank sites.
And so this, you said thin content. So thin content, just for everybody, that's like short, like 200, 500 words. And that stuff used to rank. That stuff used to, tons and tons of little thin content. duplicate content. A lot of that stuff is, if you were ranking, or if you all of a sudden saw your ranking tank, or a bunch of pages de-indexed, you might have gotten hit with that, right?
Yeah, it's entirely possible. And in a lot of instances where we have seen sites affected by this, it's often not the pages that are drivers of well-qualified leads that are suffering, but it is the net result is a loss in overall traffic, as Google is de-emphasizing pages that used to be generating clicks and traffic, but not a high level of user engagement with the content that they're finding.
So really the solution to that is, first of all, check that content out, see if it's any good. If it's not, get rid of it through on redirect, or if it is good, edit it, make it better, make it thick content, meaning like 700, 1,000 words plus, add some images, because you want to make it much better content. And that leads us into the next thing that we're going to talk about, which is what Google is, how it's going to be looking at web pages and content. And, you know, it's funny because obviously I've been doing this since the beginning, even before Google existed. And when search engines were really stupid and all you had to do is stuff some keywords in there in the code. Nowadays, way more sophisticated.
Times have changed, you know what I mean?
And it's very interesting that here we are, because it's really a lot of AI is going on these days. But let's talk about this core web vitals. What are we talking about, Jamie, when we're talking about core web vitals, and how does this work?
So the first thing of importance to note is that this is an upcoming change to Google's core ranking algorithm. It is not in place currently, and will not be in place until at least 2021. It is unusual for Google to, in most instances, give people a heads up like this, especially one with as much runway as they've given us currently. They have no set rollout date for this new algorithm update, and have told people that they will give an additional update 6 months prior to them actually beginning to roll out these new ranking factors. So it is, I think, reasonable to conclude that this update is going to be significant in a lot of ways in terms of how Google is anticipating it affecting organic rankings and traffic as a result, given that they are giving webmasters and other people like us the amount of time beforehand to prepare for these upcoming changes. It's important.
They never do that.
Almost never. It is exceedingly uncommon for them to give us this sort of heads up.
Does that make you a little worried?
In a way, yes, because it means it's going to be a big update, but in a way, no, too, because it gives us ample time to prepare. They've given us the study guide before the exam and have let us know exactly what we need to be doing beforehand. So as I mentioned, they're going to give us another update at sort of the 6-month mark before rollout, and that has not happened yet. So we are still more than 6 months away, at least, from any of these things that we're going to be discussing becoming significant factors in Google's ranking algorithms going forward.
But these things are already, sorry about that.
Loud noises!
But these things are already like they're not brand new. I mean, like, they're just going to be more important in the algorithm. So
yes.
Some of the things that we're talking about are page load time. That's a big one. And that's already part of the algorithm, but we're talking about a shift in the weight of different areas of the algorithm, I would say. Tell me if I'm wrong, but this is how I interpret it. And the user interaction with the page as well. And those are things that we obviously are always paying attention to, and certainly Any digital marketer that's worth anything should be paying attention to is page load times and user interactivity with those pages, right?
Right. And it ties in directly to even the more recent algorithm from early May.
Yeah.
In what Google is looking for from websites is the ability to provide a meaningful and useful user experience for Google's users, the people performing the searches. They have been working over several years now to refine their ability to serve content that not only matches on the surface what that search query is, but also provides a user experience on the end site that is both meaningful and impactful for the person who's performing the query. So things like de-emphasizing thin content are all working in concert towards this overall goal of improving Google's own ability to serve meaningful and relevant entire experiences and not just content to their customers, the searchers.
I mean, it's not crazy. I mean, like, look at your own websites, look at your own pages, and like, do they wow you? I mean, like, or are they boring to read? I mean, like, read your own stuff, right? I mean, we do that to ourselves all the time, right, Jamie? I mean, you and I are working on Foster constantly, and we catch it ourselves. You know, we're like, hey, this page needs an infographic, or this page needs an image to pull together, or, you know, like, this isn't well written, or it's not enough, you know, and that's part of this this world. And, you know, Google's, as you just said it, I mean, Google's job is to provide content for its users. That's the number one job. When someone types in a search, to provide the very best search results. That's what it cares about, not about your ranking. And so there's always been this battle between people wanting to rank regardless of quality, and they've done anything that they can over the years to rank, and Google pushing back on that to say, no, that's fine, you can do that, but we want it to be quality. And all these changes in the algorithm over the years have brought us to this, and they will continue to force web developers like ourselves and designers to provide a good user experience for people that do searches and end up on these pages.
That's right. And whereas the previous update in May was focused more on sort of the surface level content itself, these upcoming changes, these core web vitals, as Google has dubbed them, are much more on the technical side of web development. They're how the site functions and loads and becomes interactive, more so than just what it looks like and the content that is served on the page itself. Google's intention with this upcoming update is to take these three, what they've called core web vitals, and combine them with a couple other sort of technical development statistics to derive what they're going to be calling a page experience signal, which is sort of an aggregate figure that is supposed to boil down the overall experience of the user when interacting with the page on a technical level. There's going to be three elements to it, and anybody who is paying close attention to their site in Google PageSpeed Insights or Google Search Console and Webmaster Tools may have already seen some of these metrics being reported on, even though they are not currently part of the ranking factors. As it stands currently, they've begun giving developers access to some of this data so they can begin making changes where that may be necessary. These three technical factors that are going to become a major factor in the ranking algorithm going forward, beginning at some point in 2021, are, like I said, three things. They all have sort of technical sounding names, but I can dumb them down for everybody to remember them more easily. And they boil down to basically essentially page load speed, page interactivity, and page stability. The page load speed is called, in technical terms, the largest contentful paint, LCP, and it's essentially just how long it takes for your site to load the majority of the content on the page. Content meaning not just the written copy that you're providing, but the page itself. The faster a page loads, the better the user experience is going to be, the higher your page experience signal is going to be. That interactivity that I mentioned ties, directly pretty closely into overall page load speed. It's called first input delay, and is a measurement of at what point in that loading process the page begins to be interactive. You've probably experienced the negative side of this at points in time in your own, especially on mobile devices. You're trying to load a page, it's loading slowly. It may look like it's loaded entirely. You try to click a button, but that button isn't fully loaded yet. You can't click it, or something along those lines. That interactivity is also a major component in a good user experience, and having a fast load to interactivity time is going to also increase that page experience signal. The last one is, I'm sure, something that you have all encountered and you've noticed. It's incredibly frustrating in a lot of circumstances, the stability of the page. It's basically the amount of unexpected layout shift that occurs as a page is loading. Google calls it the cumulative layout shift score. But going back to our previous example, trying to click that button that isn't interactive yet because some script on the back end hasn't fully loaded, even though the image of the button has loaded. That's frustrating in and of itself. But if the layout shifts because that button is loading slowly or improperly, and all of a sudden you're trying to click the top of one of two buttons, and then right as you do so, the page snaps down and you end up clicking the wrong button. You end up clicking the checkout button instead of the edit cart button or something, and then you just accidentally bought something you didn't mean to. That would be a extreme example of a really negative experience with this cumulative layout shift. But it can be frustrating even without sort of taking it to that extreme measure. And those three factors combined are really what are being taken under consideration and being rolled into this update that's coming sometime next year.
And I think that when you were talking about that, I think that really applies very heavily to mobile, the mobile experience. And as we know, mobile experience is more than desktop experiences these days, people on their mobile devices. And what happens is that many websites are just the desktop versions being made, being rendered on a mobile device. And it's part of why Google's doing this. You need to have a different experience for the mobile user. I mean, like that, exactly what you're talking about. That doesn't happen on our sites. But on many websites, especially kind of like, I don't know, like, gamer sites, I'm a gamer, you're a gamer, you get on those like sites, you're trying to find, how do I get to this thing? And you get to these forums and stuff like that. And it's like this old school coded forum, and you're looking at your phone, and you're right. It's like taking forever to load. And all those things that you were talking about. I think that's what Google's trying to fix here, is create better user experiences.
Yes, and it absolutely should be approached from a mobile first perspective, as pretty much everything should be these days anyway, from design to content delivery to all other aspects of the sort of site performance and site management. You should absolutely shift your thinking to a mobile first mindset if you haven't already. Now, these elements, like I mentioned, are all pretty technical things, and things that you're not necessarily going to have a ton of control over yourself as the end user of a website. It's going to require coordination with your development team, your webmaster, whomever is managing your website, to make sure that any changes that may need to be made are implemented well in advance of this upcoming update in sometime 2021. I mentioned that savvy users may have already noticed some of these signals being reported on in Google Search Console and Webmaster Tools, in their PageSpeed Insight tools. They can already begin giving you reports showing which pages have issues with what will be in the future some of these future ranking signals. Some may be easier to solve than others. You know, page load speed can be impacted very easily by things like improperly sized or improperly compressed images, but can also be influenced by much more nuanced, much more technical elements as well. One major factor that's going to be a component for a lot of the people we work with and a lot of people in general that can affect all three of these elements, their loading speed, their interactivity speed, as well as the site layout stability, is the use of third-party tools and plugins. You know, anything that you're adding to your site is going to slow it down in one way or another. The more things you're asking it to accomplish, the more things it has to load. And as a result, just the sort of upper limit, the ceiling on max page speed scores and other scores gets lowered as a result. Now, that's not to say that you can't or shouldn't continue to use third-party tools, things like chat plugins, Facebook tracking pixels, AdWords tracking pixels. All of those things serve vital functions in the operation of a lead generation website, but come at a cost when it comes to page speed and some of these other factors. The more you have, you know, the larger the effect is going to be. If it's been a while since you've audited which third-party plugins and tools you have on the site or are using, now may be a good time to begin digging through and figuring out what's there, what still needs to be there, and what could possibly be removed if it's no longer relevant to your marketing strategy.
You don't necessarily need them on every page as well.
You don't necessarily need them on every page. I see every day people who have a Facebook tracking pixel that they added in 2012 because they were running a campaign, never removed it even though they haven't run a campaign since. If you're not making use of it, it's easy to remove, and having it there does have a non-zero effect on some of these more technical page speed and load speed factors. It's very easy to add it back in the future when it becomes necessary, but otherwise you're carrying a book around in your backpack that you haven't needed since 8th grade.
Very good. That made me... I was just thinking of something else, and then that just comment made me forget what the hell I was going to ask you, Jamie. It brought me back to 8th grade.
Sorry.
I can't remember nothing.
Okay. So what should people do? What should we advise people to get an analysis done? Is there any kind of thing that they should run their... Oh, I know what I was going to say. It's funny because who is the most notorious problem maker of slowing down page speed?
A lot of Google's own tools can have a major effect on your page speed.
So yes, the most notorious is Google itself. So
the left hand will tell you that in order to achieve the mobile friendliness icon, you need to be using Google fonts and next gen images and all of these things. And then the right hand tells you that all of those things are causing major slowdowns on your site. It is an imperfect process, and nobody should be striving necessarily to have perfect 100% scores on all of these things, unless you really want just a plain white background and some Times New Roman text on a page that doesn't do anything. Sure, if you want to max out your page speed scores, that can be done. But creating a site that is interactive and useful in relevant and functional ways is always going to come at some slight cost to a lot of these scores. And striving,
balance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Striving for perfection may be non-productive, but achieving the highest score possible while maintaining the level of functionality and usability that you need should be where everybody's mind is.
And our clients enjoy our SEO tool that keeps their website analyzed and humming, and where they get, reports whenever they want on page speed, right?
Yes, and that tool will give you a lot of insight into some of these metrics and how they can become relevant in the future. It pulls a lot of that data from some of these primary sources that I mentioned, PageSpeed Insights, Search Console, and even more detailed reports are available in those primary sources themselves.
And so if somebody heard this and they're like, how do I know if I've got a problem or not? Or how do I know if I'm going to have a problem? What advice would you give them, Jamie?
Well, if they're working with us, then we'll be their best resource. We'd be happy to look into it, share our findings, and provide sort of a solution path going forward. We're in a really unique and good position currently where we have ample time to correct any things that would become future issues under sort of the new structure of the algorithm, and are in a position to be able to do the necessary research and implement solutions in a way that is going to be effective both short-term as well as long-term, rather than making snap decisions because, you know, a site's behind the ball on an update that Google dropped yesterday without telling anybody.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, like, now's the time before this actually happens and you're freaking out because you're gone. You can make these changes now, you know, slowly, that need to be made. They need to be made anyway, and you can do them a little at a time now. And when the change hits, as Jamie said, sometime next year, you'll be more prepared than if you just wait and procrastinate, which most of you will anyway, regardless of what we say. And then you'll just be dealing with this and be freaking out. I hope not, but you know you will. But we're here to help you, so don't.
And there's some important things to remember when you go searching for some of these new metrics. You may very well see something that looks like a very damning report, hundreds of pages with terrible scores, those sorts of things. In instances like that, it's important to remember two things. One, these are not ranking factors currently, and they're telling you these pages would be problematic in the future once this is rolled out, but are not necessarily problematic currently. And two, the second element is if you're seeing an extremely high number of pages all being affected for the same reason, it's likely some systemic issue that can be changed sort of at the core development level without having to update every single page individually. Where you may run into page-specific issues are things like improperly handled image files, other page-specific ad hoc plugins that may be used. But site-wide improvements are going to be handled at sort of the developer level and are going to require coordination with whoever it is that's managing the development of the site itself.
Yeah, as you said, watch out for the WordPress plugins. Watch out for all those little plugins that are just so easy to slap in there. Make sure that you have somebody that you can work with that can help you solve these mysteries. And if you don't, we're here to help you out. Very good, Jamie. And I think in this podcast, we'll put a link to that Google Doc you shared with me earlier, because there's a lot more information on that thing.
Yeah, there's an update from Google's official webmaster blog that we can share. Goes into more detail about all of the specific elements that I mentioned today.
Cool, man. Okay, buddy. Well, thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
All right, everybody. It's been Tom Foster and Jamie Kelly, one of the smartest guys on the planet, on the world of marketing. Talk to you all soon. Take care.